This week is Parshas Shemos. I wanted to discuss this week the topic of being nosei ba'olam chavero, of bearing the burden with another person. So both concept of empathizing with the person and feeling their pain. Comes up at the beginning of this week's Parsha, as we find the Torah introduces us to Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's very interesting. The Torah doesn't tell us about how Moshe Rabbeinu became a big Talmid Chacham or a Adam Gadol. It really tells us very little about the first 60, 70 years of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. And the little bit it tells us is that when Moshe Vayigdal, it says in Pasuk Perek Beis, Pasuk Yudalef, it says Vayigdal Moshe V'yitzel Achiv Vayarbesiv Losam. He saw their affliction. And Rashi spells out he was nasan eina v'libo liyas mitzrayim. He put his heart and his eyes to being in pain with them. And what does it mean that he saw their affliction? What does it mean? The explanation that the Bali Musa give is that it was more than just seeing people in pain and feeling bad for them, more than sympathizing with them, more than empathizing with them and trying to understand them. It was this concept of making a concentrated effort to put headspace and focus on trying to appreciate and care about the suffering the other people that his fellow Jewish brothers were going through. And Moshe Rabbeinu was a prince. He was somebody in an exalted plane. Sounds like from the Ramban that this is, the Ramban says, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. The Ramban says a line like, this is when he was 12 years old and he learned that he was Jewish and he went out, even though he'd been learning Torah all these years and he was had Ruach HaKodesh, but he came out and he saw his brother's affliction and it moved him tremendously and he did everything he could to try to bear the burden with them. Medrash Rabbah in Aleph Chav Zayin spells out that, and this is all over a 2-day period. On the first day, he saw their affliction and he cried and he says, Chava li aleichem, miyutin mosi aleichem, would that I could die for them. That was how far he went in feeling the Jewish people's pain, maybe even worse than some of them felt it themselves. Would that I could die to help them from the affliction. It's a midah that Moshe Rabbeinu kept throughout his life. We find that he's with Mecheni Nami Sifrecha later, that he's always willing to stand up for the Jewish people at his own risk. And it says that he saw the burden, he saw the way that the Mitzrayim were so cruel to the Jewish people, that there were burdens that were fit for big people on small people, and vice versa, that there were burdens fit for men that were being given to women, and vice versa, that they figured out different ways to afflict them. And he went and he put down what he was doing and he went and he tried to help them physically as much as he could. And it looked like he made it like he was helping Paro by helping the people do their labor. And Hashem says, you left off what you were doing, your princelyhood and all your exalted position in Mitzrayim, and you went to see the affliction of the Jewish people and treated them like brothers. That's why I'm coming. I'm going to leave everything else. I'm going to speak with you, and that's what the pasuk says by the bush. Kisar Hashem Hashem saw that Moshe had turned aside and looked at their afflictions, and that's why Hashem appeared to him at the bush. In other words, the schus that Moshe Rabbeinu had with all his tzidkus and all his everything was this schus that he had, that he was nosei ba'olam chavero, and he cared so much about the afflictions of the Jewish people. And the next Medrash talks about how Vayarbesiv Losam, how he convinced Paro to give them off on Shabbos, ostensibly because it would be better for them accomplishing their work and not burning out. And that Moshe makes this tremendous focus on being nosei ba'olam chavero and caring about others. And he even kills a Mitzri to save a Jewish person. It's a high-level Mitzri. It ends up costing him that he has to be exiled for 60 years. And that's what he does because of his care and concern about his fellow Jewish brothers. Then we find him saving the daughters of Yisro at the well, again, caring about other people. And that's our introduction. That's what we learn about Moshe Rabbeinu, about his midah of being nosei ba'olam chavero. I mentioned once before, the Medrash talks about how Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech, they were shepherds, and that their concern and care for others came across in how they were shepherds. Moshe Rabbeinu, there was a story where a sheep ran away, and he ran after it, and he saw that it went to the river, and he said, I didn't know you were thirsty, you little Shepselah. And he waited for it to finish drinking, then he lovingly carried it back to the flock. And Rav Simcha Zissel points out some people would even mock this and be like, what are you doing? What are you, silly little sheep? And what about the big picture? What about all the other sheep and everything going on? And yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees this, and Hashem says, if somebody has that level of sensitivity towards even a little sheep, then I know that they have the right mindset to be the leader of the Jewish people. And that's part of his chus, to become the manig of the Jewish people. The melech, really, is the idea of the Jewish people. The ruler of the Jewish people is somebody who could see the individual among the group and feel that compassion and feel that care. And Rav Simcha Zissel talks about, he has many pieces in the Chachma Musar devoted to the concept of Nosei Ba'olam Chaveiro. He says this is really a higher level even than Haftarei Kamocha. Haftarei Kamocha is the love that I feel from my fellow Jew. Nosei Ba'ol is when a person is able to put themselves in the other person's shoes. He recommends that we use visualization. Imagine if it was happening to me. How would I feel? How would I want to be treated? And a person's able to step up and really show how much they love and care about their fellow brother and fellow sister. And I was thinking why it's different from chesed. I mean, chesed is that I look for ways to benefit people, to help people. Nosei Ba'ol is that I can cry for you. I could see your pain and I could feel bad. And Rav Chatzkel Levenstein points out that we have a natural midah that when we hear about something unpleasant, it upsets us. The fact that I can cry when I hear a horrible story doesn't mean that I'm being nosei ba'olam chavero. It doesn't mean I'm bearing the burden of the pain. It means that I'm bothered by hearing affliction. What does it mean to bear another person's pain? It means that I feel for them and I cry for them. I look to help them. And even when they might have been able to move on, it doesn't mean that I've moved on. I can still care. I could still, it hurts me that another person is in pain. Talks about somebody's sick and then they got a little better and okay, good. And so a lot of people looking, I don't have to down for them anymore. And the person who's nosei ba'ol realizes until they've gone back to where they were before, they're still suffering and they still have to be davened for. And it's an important midah, especially in these times. My yeshiva, for example, the Chanukah Mesiba this year, every year they have dancing. And this year, because Klal Yisrael was in an Eitz Tzara, there was no dancing. There was only a kumzat style of Mesiba. And I think it's important as we come to the winter break in many yeshivas, and people want to go on vacation, and people want to have a nice time with their family and have good pictures from it, and at the same time to remember that we're in an Eitz Tzara and that something should be different. In Mitzayir, that in the times of the famine, Yosef, he stopped having relations with his wife. He broke up that there are only two sons. In the times of the Mabul, they didn't have Tashmish on the Teva. And there's this idea of even something which is so essential to a marriage, and something, having children is a foundational thing in creation. Imagine if Yosef at Tzaddik would have had another child, or Shiva pointed out. But at the same time, there's this important midah of being nosei ba'olim chaveiro during a tzara. And it's something that we have to keep in mind. I'm not here to paskin exactly what people should do different, obviously, but I think we have to have that sensitivity. I think we have to have that perspective that it can't just be like a regular year. Just like to close by saying something in this topic about the Mashkiach, Matis Yav Salman Zeich Tzadik Uvracha. Levaya was today. Big loss for the Jewish people. Tried to be mishtatef a little, even though the speeches were in Yiddish, but did listen in a little, and they did talk very much about this Rashi, about being nosei ba'olam chaveiro, because this was something which the mashkiach, as the mashkiach not just of the biggest yeshiva in the world, but of somebody who thousands from all sorts of backgrounds turned to for guidance, and he was just like every other gadol, person who becomes a gadol b'Yisrael, part of how they do that is by caring about others and becoming an address that people turn to. Quote of Rav Yerucham Olshin spoke about how he gave his life for the City Field Asifa back in 2012. Mashkiach was realizing more and more the dangers that technology was posing to the development of the human brain, and specifically the threat it would pose to our community and to the Bnei HaYeshiva. And he was already a little bit sick, and he flew around the world making sure that all the different stripes of Hasidus in the yeshiva world would all be there at the Asifa. And he gave his life to it. And that was really his public appearance. He's really been pretty much out of the public eye for the last 11 years. Said that he fought the Satan head on, and the Satan hit him the Kaf Yerecha on the way out. He realized the way he put it to my Rosh Yeshiva and others. The day after, he said, we just won't have yeshiva guys. If we don't win this battle, people won't have the patience to sit and work on a Tosfos. We're just not going to have yeshivas anymore. We have to win this battle. And even the Goyish world is starting to realize now with TikTok, which exists to shorten the human attention span to about 30 seconds, even they're realizing that this is going to destroy all the brains of everybody if they don't fight this battle. And Mashkiach, in a sense, was ahead of his time, and he That's what the people who were involved say, that he gave his life to be able to help Klal Yisrael with this battle. Maybe B'zaycha to learn from example. May his memory be as chus for all of us, and maybe be able to follow in his ways and in the ways of the Jewish people and care and be nosei bo im chaveru. Have a wonderful Shabbos.